So that's what we're going to be looking at, the spread operator. So that's the 3 dots. And some of the things that you can do with that, where you can create new values from the arrays. You can get all of the values of the array when you're adding it into another array. So it's going to be different than when you're nesting the array. So this isn't going to be nested values in the array. It's going to be taking the initial values of that original array and just adding them into that array where we're specifying. So even if we make some updates to the original array, that's not going to be tied together anymore within that copy. Also creating a function, how we can add a bunch of arguments together, and then this is a flexible solution where it doesn't matter how many arguments we have, we can pass in all of the arguments of the array within the functions and return back a total of the values. Open up your JavaScript and we're going to create a couple of arrays. So the first array will have some numbers within it, and these can just be any numbers. So we'll set up 1, 2, 3, 4. And within the other array, we want to add in those items as well as having some other values. So I'm going to do the same where I'm going to have some numeric values. And this time let's start them 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And if we want to add in to the second array, the first array values, if we comma separate, the result will be that this is going to be an array that gets nested within array 2. So outputting the results, we've got 5, 6, 7, and then we've got the nested array. So if we don't want to have a nested array, we can use the spread operator. So the spread operator is done with the 3 dots, and the result now will be that those values from that initial array have been added in using the spread operator into the other array. So there they are, start at index number 3, and adding in all of those values until the end of that first array, and then the rest of the array values will continue. So that gives you a way to really easily be able to update and add values into an existing array. And this is also useful since if we had our original array and we make some updates to the values, if we set the index value 1 of 0, and then we go over to here and we set the value of 1 or 2 to be also 0, it's not going to affect the new array. So that new array will have that whatever the values of the original array were at the time when we added them and we created that second array. So this is going to be different than if we create another array and we link the arrays together where we've got the values and then we're not using the spread operator and simply adding the array in, nesting it in. The result here will be that that nested array will also be updated because those arrays are going to be linked together. They're going to be referencing that same array instance. So that nested array, any updates to the first array are going to also be managed and added into that new array. So the spread syntax allows us an iterable expression or string to be expanded and placed where zeros or more arguments for the elements. It can also be used to send into a function within the arguments. So if we had a function that was adding some values together, it was expecting 3 arguments, and the result would be that it would be adding all 3 together, where we're using adder, and then we're adding the results from the array 1 into it. We'll see what we get for the console. So we get undefined as it adds in the results, but it gets an undefined value. But instead, if we were to use the spread operator, it will insert those values in, returning back the results for the array added together. And because we're only expecting 3, it's adding in the first 3 results into the array. And because we changed the second and third value to 0, that's where we're producing a value of 1 that's being returned. If within the arguments we add in another value for D, so that's going to count for all of the values that we have within the array, and when we're adding them together, we're getting an end result of 5 because that's adding 1, 2 is going to be changed to 0, 3 is also going to be changed to 0, and adding it together with 4. So this also gives us an easy way to make a copy of an array. So if we've got our array and we assign it to the other arrays, so these arrays are going to be linked. So those instances of the arrays are going to produce the same results. And we can see array 4 is going to have the same contents as array 1. So using the spread operator, this is a way that we can duplicate an array. So spreading within the array brackets when we're creating the new array. And now when we output the result for array 4, it's going to have that original value from array 1 because they're not going to be linked together anymore. So they're going to be separate instances with their own separate values. So they're going to be completely separate copies of the arrays. Let's create a second function. And this function is going to add all of the values together. So just take in all of the arguments. And using the function, let's first, we'll just output within the console log the arguments. So you can see what we get for the arguments. And instead of adder, we'll use adder1. So that returns back the arguments object with the 4 arguments that were passed in. So we can actually use the for and get the value of each one of those using of arguments. So it's going to create the for loop of the arguments and creating a variable to hold the total. So starting at 0, and then we'll take total and we'll add to total whatever we've got for the value of val, and then afterwards we're going to return back whatever the value of total is. So that gives us the value of 5, and the nice thing about it is if we have a different array where we've got the array with more values, that will still be able to total all of the values that's going to loop through. So it's using the arguments, passing in whatever number of arguments there are, looping through all of them, and then adding them to gain a total. So that's another way to write this function. This is going to be more flexible because this allows us to take the value and make some updates to that value. And it actually doesn't matter how many arguments that we're passing in, it will just add all of them together.